Hey there, Drew here, and welcome back to the Drew Saur coaching channel. If this is your first time here, thanks for joining us. This channel is for those of us who want to have stellar careers with a little less stress and, if we can, a bit more fun. My job is to bring you ideas that'll help you look at your career in a new way. I promise that if you try them out, you'll start to see the professional world differently. And more importantly, they'll start to see you differently. So this video is part of my series on persuasive storytelling, because to get anything done in our career, we need other people. So the question we're trying to answer is, can I convince others to join me? And nowhere is that more important than in the interview. And I've done a number of videos on the interview that you can check out on the channel, but what I wanted to talk about today is how do you address sort of strategic level, often slightly vague questions in an interview. And this is very common, particularly as you get to more senior positions, where someone will ask you a question of, what's your take on innovation? Or how do you think about innovation? Or it could be something more specific, like how do you think about the cloud and the cloud platforms on a business like mine? And the trick here is that oftentimes you don't really know the answer, right? Because you don't know enough about the business, you don't know enough about what they're actually doing to form a specific, detailed, and coherent answer to a question that you really don't have the context for. So that's what I want to talk about today, is how do you answer those kind of questions? And what you want to be able to do is avoid the two main problems, right? So the two main problems are too vague and too specific. So oftentimes, again, when I do practice interviews with people, they'll say things like, well, that's a very good question, and it depends on a lot of different factors. And they sort of come across as a bit wishy-washy. They don't really have an opinion on the subject. And while they are correct because they don't really have the data, it come across as non-strategic, right? Because you don't know how to answer the question. The other mistake people tend to make is being too specific. So I ask you about the cloud and its impact on business, and you say, oh, it's always a good idea. Effectively something like that. That absolutely is the way of the future. Everybody needs to figure out how to go there, because once again, nothing is ever that simple and you don't know the context. So there's three things that I would suggest that you do when you start to think about how to answer the question. So one we just talked about, which is avoid absolutes, right? You don't know the answer to the question because you don't know the details of the business that you are trying to join. So step number one, avoid absolutes. Step number two is frame your answer. So if I ask about, again, moving to the cloud, I can talk about many different things in my answer, right? There's talk about people and training. There's talk about operational costs. There's talking about finances, the technology itself. How do you move data between the two? There are many different things that I could talk about when I'm answering that question. So the first thing you want to frame it is, what do you think the two or three most important things to think about? Right? Oh, so what do you think about this whole move to the cloud? Well, and I'm going to answer the question. When I think about the cloud in the context of businesses, I tend to focus on both the technology and the people aspects, because I think those are the two most important determiners for what we should go do going forward, right? And so out of all the universe of things I've talked about, I sort of gave you two. In this case, I said the technology and the people that I think are the most important, right? So I didn't say they were the only things. I just said, in my opinion, those are the most important things to consider. So I'm framing the discussion. So we're not going to have a discussion about, again, technology and people. We're not going to talk about finances. We're not going to talk about X, Y, and Z. All right? And then what I do is I provide a specific set of options that I would consider if I'm making a strategic decision. Right? So again, I'm not going to give you a straight answer because I don't know enough. But what I will tell you is that, let's take risk management, right? So I'm moving to the cloud. Let's say I picked risk management as one of my key things about the risk appetite of the business. And then I would say things like, well, when you're thinking about moving to the cloud, you need to think about the risk that you're taking, right? On the one hand, when you own all the software, you know what's going on, but you have to have that maintenance and overhead, which is a lot of work and potentially a lot of cost and comes with risk. When you're moving to the cloud, well, somebody else is doing that for you, right? Which is great because it takes the operational burden off of you, but now you don't have access to the underlying hardware. If something goes wrong, you're now reliant on another company to address it. So those are the kind of things that I would weigh if I were to come in here and look at the strategic direction of this firm based on your current portfolio. Okay. And so what I did there was really provide you how I would think about the decision, right? I didn't give you a specific answer because, again, I don't know enough. But what I did was I outlined how I would think about the problem. I didn't tell you what to do, so I avoided the absolutes. I would frame it to say, here's the main things: technology, risk, financials, people. And then I would say, thirdly, here are the things that this would cause me to do A, this is what would cause me to do B. And then you could also ask a follow-up question that says, so which of those scenarios would resonate with your company today? And you might get a little information. Oh, we're actually more concerned about run rate. We're more concerned about training. And you can now have a dialogue. Right? And that's basically the idea, right? So when you are looking at a strategic question, what they're really trying to figure out is, how would you think about this problem? They are not actually interested in the answer to the question. While that might be a bonus, what they're really trying to do is figure out, how do you think about strategic level items? So again, frame the discussion, explain what you think are the important pieces, and then give a couple of options and why you might choose A over B and what some of those criteria are. Again, example of strategic thinking. So again, what happens if you don't do this? If you don't do this, you either give an answer that may or may not be right, or you sort of answer in too vague a scenario, without giving any sort of concrete information. You're not demonstrating how you are a strategic thinker, because they can't see how you would frame the problem, which is really what they're trying to get to, right? They want to see how you think about a strategic issue, and they want to know that you have some expertise, that you have a framework, and that you could come apply that to their business if you were to join in the position that you were interviewing for. So there you go. That is a quick summary on how to answer those strategic level questions, where oftentimes the answer is, well, it depends, or I don't really know. This is a better way to answer those questions. So what's the exercise? Try it out. Practice on strategic level questions. What is your framework? How would you explain it to somebody else to show them how you think about those strategic level items and what your major decision points would be? And I promise, if you try those out, it'll change the way you are perceived when you get those questions in an interview. So give it a shot. Let me know in the comments how it goes. And as always, getting to the next level is a journey, and it helps to have a partner. You can rope in a friend, or you can hire a coach. And if you have any interest in working with me, feel free to go to drewsaur.com and we can schedule some time to chat. I look forward to seeing you next time.